What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Jericholic8704, here to give you another installment in the Jericholic8704 Q&A series. This is what, part 5? Part 5, I believe. And hopefully this doesn't really take that much time. I try to keep these things relatively short, but then again, I try, but they always end up going long because I just start rambling about certain stuff, and you guys ask good questions. What can I say? So let's dive right in, and let's get our first set of questions going. Our first set of questions come from Greedy Selfish 97. His first question: do you have any favorite video games? Absolutely. I am a huge video game fan. I'm a huge Nintendo fan, which is ironic considering my favorite video game series of all time is Crash Bandicoot. And when I say series, I really should limit it to the first 3 games in the series. There are some great games that I also love from Crash, Crash Team Racing, Crash Nitro Kart. Wrath of Cortex I thought was good, even though some people don't really like it. I do like Twinsanity. I'm not a huge fan of Crash of Titans and Mind Over Mutant, just, the kind of what they did to reboot the series. And the handheld games, Entranced and Huge Adventure, those are pretty good Crash games too. But the original trilogy is really where my heart lies, you know what I mean? And what was great about that is I played a lot of N64 and PlayStation 1 as a kid because I had 2 older brothers. Because I'm only 20 years old. So really, my first taste of video game consoles was, the 6th generation, the GameCube, Xbox, PlayStation 2. That's what I really grew up with as a kid. But I also had my N64 and PlayStation 1 as hand-me-downs because I had 2 older brothers. One's 6 years older than me, and the other's 8 years older than me. And one of them was a Sony fanboy, the other is a Nintendo fanboy. And they basically gave me their consoles as hand-me-downs because, I was just their annoying little brother that would play their video game consoles when they went to school. So from a very early age, I was playing, N64 and PlayStation 1, and the game I loved more than anything were the original Crash games. Crash 1, Crash 2, Cortex Strikes Back, and Crash 3, Warped. And if you're up to date with your video game knowledge, for any of you watching, you'll know that the Crash Bandicoot N. Sane Trilogy just came out on PlayStation 4, which was a full HD remaster of the original 3 games. And I had it pre-ordered to my PS4. It downloaded right at midnight, and I just played the hell out of it. And that was the best. I loved every second of it. It was totally awesome. Aside from Crash Bandicoot, which I'll always put at the top, between the 3, if I would rank them, I'd say 1, then 2, then 3. I know some people put 2 over 3 because 2 focuses a lot more on platforming. And while I am a platforming guru, and while I do appreciate that about Crash 2, Crash 3 does have very fun platforming sections. And the complaint about Crash 3 is that there's too many vehicle sections. But I will say that everything in Crash 3 is fun. Some stuff in Crash 2 makes me want to pull my hair out, like the backtracking. Backtracking in Crash 3 is nowhere near as bad as it is in Crash 2. So if you're not going for 100%, Crash 2 might be the better option, but because I'm a completionist and I gotta go for that 100%, Crash 3 is always going to get the nudge for me. I just love that game so much. And the boss battles are really cool too. But enough about Crash Bandicoot. Some of my other favorite series, I love Zelda. Ocarina of Time. I know I'm such a bitch for saying Ocarina of Time is my favorite one, but it is. Ironically, even though I grew up with an N64, I never played Ocarina of Time till the 3DS port in 2011. So I didn't really grow up with that game, but I just thought that game was so great. It was so much fun. And I like the Water Temple. So for any of you who hate the Water Temple, I don't know, man. Suck it. I really like it. So other great series. I'm a huge Pokemon fan. I fucking love Pokemon. That's a series that I've always grown up with. I've played every main series Pokemon game that there is to play. I've played it from Game Boy to the 3DS. And of course, I'm a huge Pokemon Go guy. So many people are like, oh, you still play Pokemon Go? And it's like, dude, what you don't understand is ever since I was a kid, it has been my dream to go outside and legitimately catch a Pokemon. And now I can do that. Like, I'm not letting that opportunity just slip through my fingers because it's no longer a trend anymore. Like, people just don't understand that. It's a lifestyle, man. Like, you're just a casual. You know what I mean? Other great video game series, obviously Super Mario, a huge Mario guy. I love all the platformers. I love the Donkey Kong Country trilogy and Donkey Kong 64. Banjo-Kazooie, one of my favorite games of all time. I haven't played Yooka-Laylee yet, which is its spiritual successor, quote unquote. But I definitely enjoy Donkey Kong 64 and Banjo-Kazooie. They're very similar, but I think Banjo-Kazooie might be my favorite N64 game. It's just such a blast to play. Kingdom Hearts, that is another great series that I love to death. It's awesome. Absolute classics. I love them to death. Oh, and Super Smash Brothers too. That's one of my favorite games. And, I really try to get good. My main is Link. For any of you who want to play me in Smash Bros., I'm always down. And you will get destroyed. So your next question. Have you seen any WCW pay-per-views from 1992? Off the top of my head, I think I've only seen Beach Blast and Wrestle War. Now, obviously, both of those shows have two classic matches in the War Games match from Wrestle War, and Beach Blast has Sting and Cactus Jack. Off the top of my head, I don't think I've seen anything else. I might have seen matches from pay-per-views. I think I've seen parts of the Great American Bash. I think I've seen the Vader and Sting match from Great American Bash, and I followed the Sting and Vader rivalry because that was kind of going on in 1992. But other than that, I think I've only seen Wrestle War and Beach Blast, which are fine shows in and of themselves. Those are the only ones I've seen. Thoughts on Jeff Jarrett turning TNA/Impact into Global Force Wrestling? This is very interesting just because it's so weird because it's like Jeff Jarrett. It's really kind of weird just to watch him transform a company that he found into another company that he found. It's just that's such a weird concept to me. But as far as TNA going into Global Force Wrestling, it's nothing's changed. Like a rebrand is not going to instantly fix all the issues that are inherently wrong with TNA. But the thing is, and I mean, I'm not the first person to say this. A lot of people have said this. The name TNA, the name Impact, is just, people associate that with just garbage and Dixie Carter and all that stuff. So a rebrand can only help them at this point. Obviously, again, it's not going to fix their problems, but it's good to know that they have an actual, GFW sounds like a wrestling promotion. TNA, people just refer to that as, tits and ass. That's what people think of, not to sound gross or anything, but that's what people think of. So, and they try to rebrand it as Impact Wrestling, and just, that doesn't really work out. So I think Global Force Wrestling is a good name, but again, that doesn't fix the problems. But then again, it's also great because Jeff Jarrett finally gets Global Force Wrestling in the mainstream, if you want to call TNA in the mainstream. And again, it's going to be hard for me to not say TNA just because I'm so used to that, but it's just, I find it funny how Jeff Jarrett is able to still get Global Force Wrestling up and running when it looked like it was doomed before it even started. But then again, he's able to pull this one out of his ass. But again, he had to kill a company that he started to create another company that he started. So I don't know, it just seems like it's the same company with just a different name. But then again, the name change was good. So I guess those are my thoughts. Again, I really haven't been invested in TNA since 2008. You know what I mean? So it's hard for me to really have a lot of strong feelings about it. So I hope that doesn't disappoint you. Would you consider 2017 to be the 1995 of the modern era of WWE? I don't know if that's really even fair to make that much of a comparison, because as much as WWE is very dull in 2017, there's no way. I mean, granted, I wasn't even alive in 1995, but there's just no way it was as bad as 1995. There's just no way. I mean, for one, in 1995, you had so many goobers, you know what I mean? You had so many goofball wrestlers. In 2017, there's a lot of great talent on the roster. And I mean, there were a lot of great talented wrestlers in 1995, don't get me wrong. But it's just, it's to the point now where it's the main problem with WWE isn't really the wrestling, it's just the booking. And granted, you could argue that for 1995, considering there were a lot of great wrestlers. But to me, the product is much more polished. The product is much more fleshed out. There's so many great people to get behind. NXT is a great alternative within WWE. So NXT is still under the WWE umbrella, but it's a great alternative. So there are some instances where Raw and SmackDown, they are good shows. Sometimes there are good pay-per-views. And the problem with pay-per-views is that they're not bad. They're just blending in with other shows to the point where they kind of seem forgettable. That's the main problem with pay-per-views nowadays. But there were some shitty-ass pay-per-views in 1995. Now, granted, I thought Fastlane 2017 was a pretty shit show. But I mean, God, I thought Royal Rumble 95 was pretty bad. SummerSlam 95 is pretty dull. Survivor Series 95 is I actually think that's a pretty good show. But WrestleMania 11, do I even need to mention that? Even though WrestleMania 33 might not have had the strongest card in the world, I mean, it was still a good show. I would take WrestleMania 33 any day over WrestleMania 11, despite it being 5 hours long. But still, it's just, I don't think it's a fair comparison. I guess you could say, there are similarities, with attendance numbers being down. I think in 1995, this is one of the worst times for attendance in WWE. So I guess there are comparisons, but to say that this is like 1995, I think is a bit of a stretch. But you could argue that they're similar. I don't think that's, something outlandish to say, but yeah, I would not say that it's close to 1995. Just it's dull. Yeah, like it's definitely not good. But I think 1995, like they were in danger of going out of business. Things were just looking really, really bad. So at no point have I just thought like, oh my God, this company is just going down the toilet. I just thought, man, this company's making really bad decisions. You know what I mean? I'm not concerned with WWE's well-being like I would have been in 1995. Any embarrassing moments in your life that you're willing to tell? Dude, you don't know me. I have so many embarrassing moments. If you remember, I don't know if you've seen the video, but I did make a video of embarrassing wrestling stories. Obviously, I can tell you other non-wrestling stories that are embarrassing. But, just a quick preview of that video. Thanks to Kevin Nash, I failed an adjective test. I once tried to buy a Playboy magazine because Tori Wilson and Sable were on the cover, and because I knew them from wrestling, not because I knew what Playboy was. I broke my arm trying to watch Sting wrestle. I thought I was Sting, so I tried to jump off my couch, and I broke my arm in the process. And I think those were my only embarrassing wrestling stories. I think I had a few more, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. Anyway, so here's a really good embarrassing story. A very funny story. It's very funny among my friends. So, for those of you who don't know, I'm a theater major in college. So obviously, as a young child, I did plays all throughout like elementary school, middle school, high school. In 8th grade, I starred as Harold Hill in my school's rendition of The Music Man. So a quick plot summary for all of you. Harold Hill is a con man. He's a traveling salesman. He comes to this little city in Iowa, and he promises to start a marching band to save the youth of the city, when really he just wants all the parents' money to buy instruments that he doesn't own, so he can get the money and then just bail and yada yada yada. So he seduces the music teacher. He tries to fall in love with her in order to, lower her sense of security so she doesn't feel, any competition around him. And it all kind of climaxes where he actually does catch feelings for her, and she catches feelings for him, and they're at the footbridge together, and they sing this nice song together. She sings how, there was nothing at all, and the song's called Till There Was You. So I was Harold Hill, and this girl, who's really honestly my best friend in real life, I've known her since kindergarten, and we're still friends to this day, and of course we talk about this story all the time. So she was Marion, that was the name of the woman that Harold Hill seduces. She was Marion Peru, I was Harold Hill, and we're holding hands at this footbridge, and because our budget was like a sandwich, our footbridge was kind of just like a wooden plank with a picket fence in front of it. Again, this is middle school drama department, so you're not going to get, the most efficient props and set pieces. So this was not, the footbridge of all footbridges. This is just a wooden plank with some picket fence around it. And this was not the most stable platform in the entire world. So she was singing this song to me, and then we did a stage kiss because this was a Catholic middle school, so God forbid students kiss one another. 14-year-old students kiss one another. That's unheard of, but that's neither here nor there. So we did a stage kiss, which looked absolutely atrocious because we're both awkward as all hell. And honestly, a stage kiss, the way we did it, looked so unnatural because we were so stiff, and it's just like that's not how people embrace. You know what I mean? It looked so awkward and looked so stupid. Anyway, that's not the good part. The good part is we were supposed to end singing together. And side note, I can't fucking sing to save my life. You know what I mean? I don't do musicals because I can't sing. However, when I was 14, my balls hadn't dropped yet, so, I still kind of had a high-pitched voice, so you can kind of get away with it, like, oh, he's just an 8th grader with a squeaky voice. Of course it's not going to sound good. So I could cover up my ass with why I couldn't sing with just like, oh, I haven't hit puberty yet. So that's what I was basically using. And besides, I kind of lowered my voice down because she could actually sing very well. So I kind of lowered my voice a little bit and let her carry me through that little song we had to do. So the point is, I'm getting ahead of myself here. We were supposed to end, after we did the stage kiss, we were supposed to end kind of like in a prom pose. Like I was supposed to spin her around and end in a prom pose. You guys know, like if any of you went to prom, you had your prom date in front of you, and you like put your arms around the girl's waist and you stand behind her. Like that's the kind of position we were ending in. And of course, I'm 14. I'm awkward. I don't know what I'm doing. So I kind of spin her around and I step and I kind of fall off the plank a little bit. And I mean, it's not like a deep fall, but it's enough to like lose my footing. And so if I don't, brace myself, I'm gonna fall. And when I turn around, I had to grab onto the first thing I could grab because I was falling and I needed to grab something for leverage, and I ended up grabbing her boobs. But anyway, so as a 14-year-old, I was able to get to second base with a girl. I was really afraid she'd beat my ass because she's a million times tougher than I will ever be. And the only highlight of this is once I got to high school, I went to an all-boy high school, so of course everyone's bragging about what they've done and what they haven't done. And I could always say I got to second base with a girl, and I know deep down I wasn't lying, but it was in a musical, so at the end of the day, who's really laughing? My first kiss was also a stage kiss, so there's that too. So yeah, that's an embarrassing moment from my life. Hopefully that was worth it. If it wasn't, I'm sorry. So there's a lot more, but I'm just not thinking of them right now. But trust me, I can always share more. Did any old logos from TV shows or movies scare you as a kid? Not really. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, there's a lot of things like, like if you watched Are You Afraid of the Dark on Nickelodeon, like that intro scared the piss out of me. But as far as logos from TV shows or movies, I really can't think of any. The Halloween Havoc logo, I mean, was kind of scary, but I mean, But by that point, I really wasn't spooked out by that thing. But yes, thank you for the questions, and hopefully I answered them to a T. All right, Mr. Beetle890 asked the following questions. First, favorite summer song. So I thought about this for a bit, and one of my favorite songs to just kind of blast in my headphones when I'm outside kind of just has a very, free form, very, lighthearted feel is Lost in Stereo by All Time Low. It's a band based out of Baltimore, Maryland, the greatest state in the entire world. And, the song's just about a girl that the lead singer likes, and she's so obsessed with music that she's kind of oblivious to everything else in the world. It's a very lighthearted song. It's a very simple, plot to the song. It's something that you can easily listen to. It's very catchy. And that kind of makes a summer song great. A song that's very catchy, very recognizable, and, it's very loud, and all the instruments come together. It's really, really awesome. The chorus is such a jam, and it's such a song where you just want to, you're driving down the road, and you just roll down all the windows, and the wind's blowing all around the car, and you just blast it as loud as you possibly can. It reminds me of a song you'd play on the way to the beach. It's a very, very fun song, and I really, really enjoy it. I mean, granted, I can enjoy it any day of the week, any day, any month, any year. And, this song came out in 2009. I'm still listening to it. But it's just a very, very fun song to play when you're just on those, long drives down to the beach. That's what it reminds me of. So your second question, how would you book and build a Jericho retirement match? Now, I thought about this for a bit, and I have a feeling a lot of you might disagree with me on this, but this is my vision for a Jericho retirement. I say Jericho, maybe he comes back later this year. I don't know what brand he'd be on. Let's say Raw, but he might be on SmackDown considering Kevin Owens is on SmackDown, but who knows? So I say Jericho should go out as a heel, just because Jericho is just so iconic as a heel, and I think for this to work, he needs to be a heel. So let's just say he does a heel program with someone, and it leads up to a match at WrestleMania 34. Jericho has his match at Mania 34, and the next night, whether he's on Raw or SmackDown, the next night after WrestleMania, he's out in the ring and he's just cutting a promo, just cutting a promo about anything. And then I think an NXT call-up should come and confront Chris Jericho. And I was looking at the current NXT roster. I think the best call-up for this particular match would be Johnny Gargano. So I'm going to say Johnny Gargano comes up and confronts Chris Jericho. And Chris Jericho's like, who the fuck are you? You're just some NXT nobody. Look at you. You're a pipsqueak. I'm even taller than you or something like that. Just make fun of him. And Jericho kind of jumps him from behind, and they have a match. And I think in kind of like a 1, 2, 3 Kid, Razor Ramon kind of way, Gargano can get the upset victory over Chris Jericho. So this launches Gargano immediately. He defeated Chris Jericho in his first night. And then Gargano can leave kind of all, happy and kind of shocked that he beat Chris Jericho in his first night on the main roster. And then Jericho can just kind of sit in the middle of the ring, just devastated and embarrassed. And then he can just fucking blow a gasket and just throw this 3 to 5 minute temper tantrum. He can rip, I was trying to harken back to his WCW days where he would rip the tuxedo off the announcer, but if he were to rip the announcer's clothes off, all of the ring announcers are women, so that might be a bad idea. Although there is that Greg, is it Greg something? There is a male ring announcer, so maybe if he's there, he can rip off his suit, or he can rip off, I don't know, Michael Cole's suit, or whatever show he's on, whatever the commentator is, JBL's suit, or he can rip JBL's hat, or punt JBL's hat into the crowd or something. He can just do a bunch of crazy stuff, take out some chairs, whack the ring post. Just similar to those temper tantrums he threw in WCW. He should just do that for 5 minutes. The crowd can chant, goodbye, you suck, whatever they want to chant at him. And Jericho's just like, fuck this, I'm out, see ya. I think that would be an epic way to end Jericho's career. Next question, what is Jericho's most underrated promo? So looking back on it, I want to take you back to a Nitro from June 8th, 1998. And in this, what had just happened was Chris Jericho had lost his Cruiserweight Championship. I was about to say Intercontinental Championship. Chris Jericho had just lost his Cruiserweight Championship from Dean Malenko. It was at Slamboree when there was a 15-man Battle Royal, and the winner of that Battle Royal faced Chris Jericho, and Dean Malenko disguised himself, and then he came out, he won the Battle Royal, and then he surprised Jericho, and he beat him for the belt. So after this, Jericho had, this is when he went to Washington, D.C. to try and, reverse the decision by getting, going to the Library of Congress and looking up the rules of wrestling. Anyway, Chris Jericho comes out, and Tony Schiavone is interviewing him, and what makes this so amazing is he calls Tony Schiavone Schiavone, which was amazing, and then he read a letter he got from Ted Turner, and what was great about this is it's not, like, Jericho's delivery on this promo is great. All he's doing is reading this letter from Ted Turner and then just reacting to it, but the context of it is so great, because Jericho gets this letter from Ted Turner, and he still has it in, like, the package that he got from, like, the Postal Service. So Jericho was so confident that Ted Turner was going to see his way that he did not even read this in advance. He kept it sealed, and he was going to open it live on Monday Nitro and read it for the first time. He was going to do a cold read of this letter, despite what might lie in the letter. So at first, Ted Turner's like, hey man, like, I'm sorry, it is kind of bullshit the way you lost your title. And Chris Jericho's like, yes, see, even Ted Turner agrees with me. And then Ted Turner, does a bait and switch on him and says, but unfortunately, you're such a dick that I don't feel sorry for you at all. You're a bastard and tough luck. But the great thing about this is the moment the letter turns sour for Jericho, he, like, sells it, and his facial expressions and his voice gets all cracked, and he, like, is about to cry. But what's great about it is, even though the letter's getting worse and worse, Jericho keeps reading it, hoping that there will be some sort of payoff in the end. But in the end, Jericho just looks like a fool. I laugh every time I watch this just because of how ridiculous it is that Jericho will just continually read this, even though Ted Turner is just calling him out every single line for being an idiot. You really have to go back on the network and watch this. This is a hilarious promo. Definitely, this doesn't get talked about with some of his great WCW work, and it's really, really funny. What is, in your opinion, the worst WrestleMania main event? Now, I go back and forth with this because can you really count Hulk Hogan versus Yokozuna as the main event of WrestleMania 9? Because if you can, I would say that one. To be honest, the actual main event, the built main event of Bret Hart versus Yokozuna was a pretty good match. It was okay. It wasn't, I would say it's probably better than the WrestleMania 10 match, if I'm being totally honest. But, it was still a decent main event. Now, Hogan winning the title, that was more of like a segment. It really wasn't built as the main event. So if we're kind of being technical here, I will say Hogan versus Yokozuna from WrestleMania 9. But if you want a built up main event for WrestleMania, I'm probably, off the top of my head, I'm probably going to have to say WrestleMania 27. Now that I think about it, or maybe 13. 27 and 13 are really up in the air for me. The thing about 27 is I hated how I never took Miz seriously as a champion contender. And granted, they tried, and they took a risk with Miz. Did it pay off? Not really. I mean, it took a while for Miz to finally become, his own personal character in WWE. But they took a risk on him. They took a chance, and I can applaud them for that. My main issue was how The Miz was basically an afterthought. It was all about The Rock and John Cena. And just not to mention, they had that epic video package before the match they didn't even show on Raw. And that video package sold me on Miz, but they showed it moments before the match was about to start. So the build-up for Miz really wasn't all that great. He wasn't really the focal point of the match. They teased a double countout in the main event of WrestleMania. Like, what the fuck? It was just awful. And I mean, with Sid and The Undertaker from WrestleMania 13, that match just sucked dick. You know what I mean? It was just a really, really bad match. But honestly, even though the 27 match was probably better from an in-ring standpoint, I think I'd say the 27 main event was worse just because of the circumstances around it. You know what I mean? So, if we're getting technical, Hulk Hogan versus Yokozuna from WrestleMania 9, just because it was such bullshit. But if we're talking about the built main event for WrestleMania, even though Mania 13 was worse from an in-ring standpoint, I'm going to say WrestleMania 27, just because they completely disregarded their champion that they tried to build up, and they wonder why people didn't take him seriously. So, I'm going to say WrestleMania 27. Thoughts on Todd Grisham as an announcer, excluding the epic Kane moment from the draft, which was a moment we will never forget as long as WWE is around. I 100% agree with you on that one. There's certain moments in wrestling that will always make me laugh, and that Kane, you know what? Hold on, I'm just gonna look it up right now. I'm just gonna look up Kane Todd Grisham. Selecting our draft pick right now. Kane! I will say that always, like, that will always make me laugh. That is just, oh god, that is such a great moment. But aside from that, I really don't remember a lot of Todd Grisham's commentary, if I'm being honest. I think he was on SmackDown for a bit and ECW for a bit, and this was a time around like 2008, 2010, I believe is when Todd Grisham was on commentary. I really wasn't watching a lot of SmackDown and ECW. I was mainly just watching Raw. So I really can't I guess he was okay. The only other like meme-worthy moment aside from the Kane thing was when Christian came back. I do remember this. It was Christian and Matt Stryker. And Christian came back after being gone for a few years, and Todd Grisham was like, it's Christian. So to answer your question, Mr. Beetle, Todd Grisham, aside again from the epic Kane moment, because that does make him the greatest announcer of all time, he was okay. I never really cared for him. He was better than Coach or I guess David Otunga or Byron Saxton or maybe not even Byron Saxton. That's a little harsh. What's the other dude in NXT? Percy Watson. I guess he's better than those guys. But he was just an average announcer. Not too great, not too bad. All right, next set of questions. Steven Taylor. So first question, if you had a girlfriend/wife, would you want to see her have sex with another woman? I love watching my wife eat out women and get fucked by a strap-on dildo. To each his own, man. But personally, I would say no. I really don't have a good reason why. I mean, I don't have any problems with anything you're doing here. I just, personally, for me, I wouldn't want to do that just because I'm a hopeless romantic kind of guy. I wouldn't want anyone else involved in any sort of relationship that I'm in. I wouldn't want I wouldn't be a swinger. I wouldn't want to be a voyeur or anything like that. So I'm just going to keep it personal. I'm just going to keep it just between my girlfriend and myself. I wouldn't want anyone else involved in that. But again, that's just me. To each his own. If you're happy with what you're doing, then dude, go right ahead. Most overrated diva in looks. I gotta think about that. I mean, I don't really know, dude, because like a lot of divas are really hot. I honestly I'm trying to think of like when I consider overrated in looks. I'm just trying to think of. I guess maybe oh god, Ashley Massaro maybe. I just thought she was like, yeah, again, I'm not saying she's ugly, but I put a lot of other girls before her. I guess maybe, yeah, that's probably a good one. I don't think she's overrated in looks, but like, people would always say Kelly Kelly was the hottest diva around the time of like, 2010, 2011, 2012. But to me, Eve Torres was a million times hotter than Kelly Kelly. But again, to each his own. I mean, really, how can you say like I can't even like fathom saying that like a WWE diva is overrated in looks when like almost like every WWE diva in the world has been like super hot. So I can't even fathom. But like, yeah, I guess Ashley Massaro is my answer. Maybe she just wasn't my type. You know what I mean? Can you date a girl who's less than 5 feet tall? Hey man, anything is possible. I theoretically, yes, I could. The problem is I am 6'3", so if this girl is less than 5 feet tall, that is one hell of a height difference. And I was standing in line once at a GameStop, and there was a girl in front of me, and she was like an adult, and she was very short. She was maybe like, I would guess maybe 4'10", 4'9", maybe. She was very, very short, and I just towered over this woman. I would probably feel self-conscious if I was dating a girl who was less than 5 feet tall, because I would just feel like a fucking freak of nature. You know what I mean? I'm already tall as is, and so many people comment on it already. Again, anything is possible. I'm always open to anything. But the other thing is, I haven't met many girls who are less than 5 feet tall. I've met really girls who are really short, but they're within 5 feet. Who's the greatest man alive? Dude, if we're talking wrestling, and dude, honestly, like the greatest man alive is Kazuchika Okada. Like he's just fucking awesome. He's such a god. Second place is Kenny Omega. Maybe third place Shinsuke Nakamura. Like those guys are so fucking awesome. Maybe non-wrestling. I don't know. Kit Harington. He's kind of a badass. I always liked Kit Harington from Game of Thrones. Very very cool guy. Sexiest woman alive. All right. Let me think about this. Wrestling wise, Alexa Bliss. In the mainstream, dude, I love Emilia Clarke. Again, another Game of Thrones actress. God, she is so beautiful. It's crazy. Buy or sell ass or boobs. That made me laugh. I don't know. Again, this is kind of one of my things where it's like I will never have a preference. You ask me the question, and dude, I will give you an answer. I'm gonna sell on, I don't know, sell an ass. I'll just that was my gut instinct. Do you eat ass with a fork and knife, dude? With a fork and knife. Callum Flynn asked some 3 interesting questions. First, who should retire Brock? And I was thinking about this a bit, and I thought back to the Undertaker match with Brock Lesnar, and a lot of people often say, like, oh, they always should have given the Taker win to an up-and-comer, would have given him such a big rub, they would have always had that person like, oh yeah, I was the guy that ended Undertaker's streak, as opposed to someone like Lesnar who was already established. And my argument for that is, I believe that is that is a valid argument. That's a valid complaint as to why, giving the win to someone who's already established like Lesnar is a bad idea. However, my view of it is, with WWE, and as unreliable as they are to create stars, how many times have we seen a wrestler that they're really hot on for a bit and then they just fall off a cliff? Prime example, to a lesser extent, but still an example, Fandango. They have his first match at WrestleMania with a win over Chris Jericho, and Jericho is not a jabroni. He's an established veteran, and sure, a lot of people have beaten Chris Jericho, but your first match is at WrestleMania. You know what I mean? They clearly have high hopes for you. And then he got the concussion, and then by the end of the year, he was just some dude, and now he's doing, sure, the Fashion File stuff is funny, but could you really take that guy as, a serious contender for, any WWE, or well, I guess if Jinder Mahal is WWE champion, I guess I can take anyone seriously as a contender, but you know what I mean. So with that, I was thinking oh, you got to give it to a young guy, but I'm I don't know if I want the person to retire Brock Lesnar, one of the only legit badasses WWE really has left, to be just some dude who really isn't established yet. And the name I came up with, I was thinking Samoa Joe, but then I thought, Samoa Joe's a little too old. You don't know how much time's left for Joe, even though it would be great. And considering that the Samoa Joe Brock Lesnar match is past, I don't know if it would be 100% believable if he were to come back and beat Brock and retire him. Even though I could believe it, but I just don't think a lot of people would want to see that. So I think whoever's going to retire Brock, it has to be a one-time only meeting. It can't be a rematch. It can't be a opponent he's faced before. So the person I picked was Kevin Owens. I think Kevin Owens would be the perfect person to do it because, one, Kevin Owens, in a sense, is already established. Sure, there is more grooming and more growth left for Kevin Owens, and he hasn't hit the peak years of his career yet in WWE. I understand that. But, they clearly had high hopes for Kevin Owens. They had him beat John Cena in his first match, and they've done a relatively good job of keeping him relevant. Now, sure, you can say when he was Universal Champion that Jericho outshined him. You can argue that. You can say they didn't, they had him win his first World Championship in a very cheap manner. They didn't really make it seem like he was that strong of a guy. They just won it because Triple H fed it to him. Understandable arguments. But at the same time, you can tell that they like him. Triple H is definitely a big fan of him. I don't know how Vince feels about him. But at the same time, you can just see that there is hope for Kevin Owens. They gave him the DVD. They clearly like him. They clearly see him and see money. And they definitely have a spot. They'll always have a spot for him. So I think if they really want to launch Kevin Owens to be the top heel of the company, they want him to be, the biggest bad guy. They want him to look like the biggest badass on planet Earth. Have him retire Brock Lesnar. Your next question, best wrestling books / podcast episodes. So in terms of the podcast, I can't really recall any specific episodes, more as moments, but bear with me here. So some of my I do love my wrestling podcast. I'm a subscriber to Wrestling Observer, so of course I listen to Wrestling Observer Radio, Wrestling Observer Live, Brian and Vinny. I like Filthy Four Daily, and those are the main ones I listen to. I really don't listen to a lot of the other ones. Those are the main four that I really enjoy. I really can't think of any like specific episodes that are my favorite. There are certain things that they've reviewed that I've really enjoyed, like, especially for Brian and Vinny. That's probably my favorite of the four because I really like the chemistry that Brian Alvarez and Vinny V have together. Some of my favorite things they've ever reviewed were the Vince McMahon $1 Million Mania. That episode is hilarious. I really enjoy some of their Raw reviews. I know that's a pretty general claim, but there's like they reviewed one of the Raws leading into Elimination Chamber 2012. I think it's on YouTube. That one is hilarious. It really a lot of pay-per-view reviews. I know Elimination Chamber 2015. That review is really funny. And of course, there's a lot of great moments. There's a lot of great songs that they've played, and a lot of just really awkward moments. It's very, very fun. Other wrestling podcasts I listen to, I listen to Talk Is Jericho. One of my personal favorites, I really liked the Kevin Owens episode. That one was really good. Both the live one he did and the interview they did before they really got into their friendship storyline. Just a few of those are pretty good. I liked Alexa Bliss's. That one was good. And I'm trying to think of any others that were pretty good. Those are the only ones I can think off the top of my head. The Hulk Hogan one was interesting. He had Triple H on there. That was cool. Shawn Michaels was cool. Talk Is Jericho. I don't listen to it super often. I listen to it maybe because sometimes he has like music guests, and I'm not really into that stuff. Or at least the music guests he has on, I don't really care too much for. So I kind of just usually just kind of get rid of those episodes and usually just save it when he has wrestlers on there. And I know he just uploaded today Sheamus and Cesaro, so that should be interesting. So I think I'm going to listen to that one. But I also listen to Solid Monster Sounds Off. I don't have any particular episode that I enjoy more than any of the other ones, but that one's I think he's one of the best, in my opinion, probably the best. I don't know if I'd go that far, but definitely very informative, always fair, always objective. I listen to Good Mic Work. That's another guy who's very fair and objective. He basically is a YouTube channel, but he has all of his podcasts and all of his commentaries on iTunes, so that's how I listen to everything. And very fair, very objective, very smart. Again, I don't have any particular episodes. I mean, some of his Q&As were really awesome, and with Good Mic Work, he did like a top 10 WrestleManias. It's kind of outdated. I think he made it before like WrestleMania 29, but still, it was a very, very cool commentary. And Wrestling Soup. Wrestling Soup is probably the funniest of the bunch. It's so just, it's just tasteless humor, just so stupid, and that's why I love it so much. Probably my favorite Wrestling Soup moment is when they reviewed Sonny's porn tape. Like, that's just Wrestling Soup in a nutshell. They're reviewing Sonny's porn, and just it is one of the funniest things I've ever listened to. I remember I went to New York the other day. When I say the other day, I mean like a couple weeks ago, and I was taking the train from BWI Airport down to New York City, and I was just laughing on the train the entire time. It was like a 3-hour train ride, and of course the Wrestling Soup podcast is like 3.5 hours. At least that week it was. Sometimes like 3 to 3.5 hours. And I was just laughing the entire time with some of the funniest stuff I'd ever heard. So definitely a big fan of them. Your next question, top 5 dream matches. Well, you didn't say top 5, but I mean, off the top of my head, I'm going to say Sting and Undertaker. That's still the undisputed number 1. It's a shame that, we could have had this match at WrestleMania 31, and instead we had Sting and Triple H, which granted was still fun, but I mean, the Undertaker Bray match, that was just something that we really didn't need to see. So to think that they could have had that match still just makes my skin crawl. And then another personal one for me, no real reason behind it other than they're just two of my favorites, Chris Jericho and Sting. I mentioned that earlier when I was talking about booking Jericho in TNA. This could be a really, really fun match. Nothing really too spectacular. No real good reason behind it other than just they're two of my favorites. I was thinking about it a little bit more, and another one that I think would be really, really cool to see is Hiroshi Tanahashi going one-on-one with Shawn Michaels. I think that could have been a really, really fun match. Just such a great character, just so awesome. I love Tanahashi, and Shawn Michaels being such the babyface that he was. I mean, again, we all know Shawn Michaels was a great heel, but he was also a really great babyface. and see those two got like a 96 Shawn Michaels and Hiroshi Tanahashi. God, it would have been really, really awesome. And another one, I'm going to use Chris Jericho again. I use Sting twice, so I can use Jericho twice. I'm thinking maybe like a Lionheart, or maybe even a Y2J, like a 2000, 2001 Y2J Chris Jericho against a Kenny Omega. That would be really, really awesome. The promos would be great, would have been so much fun to see, and the match would be so incredible. Definitely would be one of my personal picks. And lastly, um, I'll say Daniel Bryan and Bret Hart. I think that could have been a really, really fun match. Just the seriousness of Bret Hart and just, the fun-loving attitude of Daniel Bryan. I mean, that could just be a very, very fun dynamic. I even think, I feel like Daniel Bryan could have fit right in with like a 97 heel Bret Hart. I think that would have made the match even better. I was thinking face versus face, like a 94 Bret Hart and like a 2000, like maybe 2013 Daniel Bryan. But I think a 1997 2013 Daniel Bryan would have been a really, really awesome match. Or maybe even a 97 Bret Hart and like a 2006 Bryan Danielson. I think that could have been really intense, really stiff, a really, really fun match to watch. Barry MK400, can you review any ECW from 2006? They're putting it on the network July 10th. Dude, I got a video coming up for the first official episode, the first episode after One Night Stand 2006. I'll have it up on my channel right after this Q&A. All right, Osmic Jizzles, next questions. Thoughts on Mr. Perfect 2002 run, and how would you have booked him? So, the thing with Mr. Perfect is, I think WWE had the right idea, but the execution was a little off. Mr. Perfect got a huge reaction when he came back, and since he was, later into his career, I would have used him as a utility veteran, kind of like a role that Chris Jericho played in the latter portions of his career. But the problem is they kind of just squashed him right away. They kind of made him lose a bunch of matches right off the bat. Like I remember he beat I think it was like Val Venus the next night after Royal Rumble, and then after that he just started losing and losing and losing to the point where he was like on Sunday Night Heat. He wasn't even on the card for WrestleMania, which I think was a big mistake. Now, granted, I don't think he should have been challenging for any titles or anything like that, but he really could have put over, a big wrestler on the grand stage of WrestleMania. And I know a lot of people do Kurt Hennig versus Kurt Angle, and honestly, Kurt Angle was facing Kane, and that match really wasn't even all that great. So you could have done Kurt Hennig and Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 18. I was thinking maybe you could have done Kurt Hennig and Rob Van Dam, considering Rob Van Dam was still over at this point, and if they weren't going to put the title on him, and if they weren't going to put him in the main event, a match with Kurt Hennig would have been good, and it would have been good to elevate him. So, and I mean, Kurt Hennig just wrestled in the dark match, didn't he? So I think, just they kind of had the right idea of having him, put guys over, but not to the point where he kind of just seems like any other jobber on the roster. Like, this is Kurt Hennig, he was a big star, one of the best wrestlers of all time. So you really got to treat him like that. So I think, you got to give him a couple wins. You got to make him seem like a big deal. And they kind of didn't do that. They just kind of made him seem like, oh, yeah, it's Kurt Hennig. All right, he's going to go out on Sunday Night Heat and lose to, I don't know, just some dude. So I think if I were in their shoes, I would have had him be a utility vet had he not been released from the company and had he not died a year later. He could have fought, Rob Van Dam at WrestleMania, maybe Edge at SummerSlam. He could have been involved. He could have formed a tag team and, joined the tag team division. He could have been part of the SmackDown 6, maybe throw him in that mix and maybe make a SmackDown 7, if you will. So have him face guys like Benoit, Angle, Edge, Mysterio, maybe have him face the Guerreros, you know what I mean? So I think SmackDown would have been a good role for him once the brand split hit. I don't think Raw, to be fair, Raw could have used him too, because I mean, Mr. Perfect's going to be great wherever you put him because he's just so awesome. But, I could see him gelling so well with the SmackDown 6, but Raw definitely could have used him too. So it didn't really matter, but, my instinct told me put him with SmackDown just because of all the great talent they have on that roster. So that's what I would have done. Now, granted, things didn't go well when he got released only a few months after returning. I think it was maybe like May or June because of the plane ride from hell. He got into a physical altercation with Lesnar. They were having the takedown tournament or whatever. So that got him released and everything. So unfortunately, things didn't work out the way they planned. But with the months he was in the company, it didn't seem like anything truly, truly special, even though it should have been. 5 favorite title reigns. I'm going to do this off the top of my head. I'm sure I can think of more. But when it comes to my favorite title reigns, I'm not going to put this in any order. So I'm going to think, one, it has to be Bret Hart's title reign from WrestleMania 10 to WrestleMania 10 to Survivor Series 1994. Shawn Michaels' title reign from WrestleMania 12 to Survivor Series 1996. Those title reigns are kind of similar in the sense that, like, it's the two guys, the new generation. It was the time when they were both having, like, their best matches of their career. They were the champion. They felt like the champion. They felt like the top guy. It was a really, really great moment for both guys to win the title at WrestleMania. And I think that, the reigns are very similar. And, they lost the title at Survivor Series and they gained it back very, very quickly. Now, for Shawn, he kind of dropped it as soon as he won it because of the whole lost his smile incident. But those are two title reigns that I really, really love. Another one that I really loved is CM Punk's 434-day title reign. Now, even though this could have been booked a little better, and he could have been booked to, he could have been booked in the main event and pay-per-views a little bit more often to make him seem like a big deal. Obviously, during this championship reign, despite him being the champion for over a year, he still felt like he played second fiddle to John Cena, so that is a drawback with this title reign. That being said, though, when you're growing, like, I was, in 2012, I was a freshman in high school. This is something I really hadn't seen a lot, when I was watching CM Punk wrestle, and have him be a champion for such a long time. I had seen a few long title reigns. Honestly, like, if I started watching in, like, late 02, early 03, the longest reign I think I had seen was, John Cena held the title for a year, but that reign was the reign was hit and miss. Randy Orton held the Intercontinental Championship for a little bit. But this reign felt like a truly big deal. It felt like something that was kind of kind of old school with how long CM Punk had been defending the championship, and he was having really, really good matches. And I don't know if these are the best matches of his career, but he had the match with Del Rio where he initially won was good. He had a pretty good match with Ziggler at Royal Rumble. He had the good feud with Jericho. He had the good feud with Bryan. He had the great match at Over the Limit. They had a pretty good match at Money in the Bank. They had the good. I like the triple threat with Kane at No Way Out with Kane and Daniel Bryan. And he had that awesome match with Cena at Night of Champions. So granted, again, I kind of talked about this earlier, how CM Punk wasn't always booked to be in the main event. And whenever he was in the main event, it was usually with Cena, or in his case, he did wrestle Ryback in the main event of Hell in a Cell. So he was only in the main event a handful of times. But he always stole the show, in my opinion, and that's what made him so great as champion, aside from the 434-day title reign. And as far as it ending to The Rock, that's always debatable. You could always wonder whether CM Punk should have been in the mix at WrestleMania. Should he have just held the championship into WrestleMania 29? I personally think so. I think that would have been a smart move. I think WrestleMania 29 had a missed opportunity, not doing Rock, Cena, and Punk in a triple threat where Rock and Cena could have challenged, the big heel champion CM Punk. And eventually, if they wanted Cena to win, that's fine. Cena could have dethroned Punk's 400 some odd, and maybe it would have been a little bit more than that, considering he would have held it to WrestleMania. It would have been 500 and change with his days as champion. So I think you could have had John Cena dethrone him. You could have had Rock in the main event too to get the payoff. You could have had the star power that you wanted in there, and you could have had. It's everything you want. It's the big star in The Rock. Your poster boy in John Cena, and you had the biggest heel in the company, the big heel, 500-day plus cocky, arrogant champion. So to me, it seemed like it played out perfectly. But of course, they did it differently. They had Rock Cena too, and you can make with that what you will. As far as other title reigns, one of them that, like, I really had to think about, but, like, one of them's got to be Okada's current IWGP Championship run. He beat Naito at Dominion, and since then he's just had fantastic matches. I don't need to speak anymore about the Kenny Omega matches. You know what I mean? And as far as I remember, like, all the matches in his title reign, at least all the big pay-per-view matches, have been awesome. And ever since he won it at Dominion, the one when he won it at Dominion, that was a great match too. So I've really enjoyed this title run. Now, granted, I haven't seen every single match from it, but the big matches and the pay-per-view matches I've seen, and just knowing that how great of a champion Okada is and how great of a wrestler he is, and he's really doing a great job as, like, the poster boy for New Japan. So I'll put this title reign in. Again, this is off the top of my head. I'm sure I'll think of more, and I'll probably think of one that has more sentimental value to me than Okada's current IWGP Championship run. But as far as this list goes, I'll put that one on there. And probably one of my favorites, and maybe my favorite of all time, Chris Jericho's Cruiserweight Championship run in 1998. This is when he was on fire. He was just hilarious on the mic. He was having great matches, and even after he lost the title, he still felt like the champ because he was just so great. So I'll say those just to recap: Bret Hart in '94, Shawn Michaels in '96, CM Punk in 2012, Okada's current IWGP Championship run, and Chris Jericho's Cruiserweight Championship run in 1998. Owen Hart or Bret Hart? So, personally, I think that Owen Hart is a better talker, and I think that Owen Hart, in terms of his wrestling ability, is either equal to or a hair less than Bret Hart. And to me, when you factor all that in, you could argue that Owen Hart is the better of the two. I always really loved Owen Hart. I always thought Owen kind of had this charm to him that was really, really great. And the thing about Bret is, especially when 1997 hit, which in my opinion is the best year of Bret Hart's career, in the sense that, sure, in 94 he had probably a better list of matches, even though in 97 he was still having great matches. Bret was just on a whole other level. He was the hottest wrestler in the entire world at one point. And, you know, all those promos he cut, like, look at that promo he cut after that cage match on Raw, where he pushed Vince McMahon down, and he was treating everything like it was so real to him, because it was. I mean, it was real to Bret Hart. And that's not a knock or a criticism. I'm not saying Bret Hart's like an idiot or a mark or anything like that. Like, he took it seriously. And because he took it seriously, it translated to the product, and it made the product better, and it made Bret Hart the hottest wrestler in the world. So because of that, I think I'm going to put Bret Hart over Owen Hart from like an objective standpoint. From a subjective standpoint, from a personal standpoint, I go back and forth. Like, I really love Bret and I really love Owen for different reasons. But at the end of the day, both of them are two of the best wrestlers I've ever seen. You know what I mean? So it's really like, it's like saying, who do you love just a little bit more? With that, I'm going to say that Bret is just a little bit above Owen for me. Your next question, why has the Dean Ambrose singles run flopped so hard? Now, the thing about Dean Ambrose is it's very tragic, because in 2017, every time his music hits, I just, part of me is just like, okay, here comes wacky Dean Ambrose. But in 2014, when the Shield initially split and he had that babyface run, I honestly thought he was the best wrestler in that company. He was so awesome. There was nothing he could do that wasn't great. He was a great wrestler. He was having great matches with Seth Rollins. And there was a sense of believability to all of his actions. When he went after Seth Rollins, you believed it. You felt his emotion. You felt like he was really betrayed. And you felt like he was actually a loose cannon. Like, people were comparing him to, like, Brian Pillman. He had that loose cannon vibe to him. He had that unpredictable edge to him. And the thing that's missing from him now is simply that unpredictability. We have seen Dean Ambrose have the same match forever. When he went after Seth Rollins, there was this real emotion behind it. But now it's just he's doing this same wacky comedy. He comes out, he has the same match. And I mean, there were times where my interest in Dean Ambrose was spiked. But I mean, it all kind of went downhill after the Seth Rollins feud in 2014. Entering into 2015, he just was chasing the Intercontinental Championship around, and he seemed to catch a new spark when he had that feud with Lesnar. Because remember, originally the plan for WrestleMania 32 was going to be Brock and Bray Wyatt. But the thing about it is, because Dean Ambrose and Brock Lesnar had such great chemistry with each other, that it got to the point where they had to change plans. They had to call an audible, and they let Brock and Dean go at it in a singles match, because they kind of wrestled together in that triple threat from Fastlane the month before. And I remember Dean Ambrose said it on Stone Cold's podcast that it was Brock was lazy about it, and the match really wasn't anything special. It was only like 12 minutes. It was over before it even was able to begin, and it kind of made Dean Ambrose kind of look like a scrub. Now, granted, I still say that Dean Ambrose really didn't have to win that match. He definitely could have lost to Brock Lesnar, but they could have made it a little more convincing that Dean Ambrose was, a threat to Brock Lesnar's, to the match. Like, he could have posed some sort of threat, but it seemed like Brock Lesnar was just swatting away a fly. That's all it really seemed like. So they just kind of treated him like he really wasn't anything special. They haven't really done anything special with him. I know they gave him the WWE Championship, but honestly, I thought he got worse after he had the WWE Championship. He just didn't have a lot of oomph to him. And now he's just kind of going through the motions, and he's in this never-ending feud with The Miz. There's just nothing interesting there. And I know sometimes a lot of people just say that the easiest fix to anyone is just to turn him heel, but you have to at this point. Dean Ambrose has done everything he possibly can as a babyface, and I was thinking he was going to turn heel on Seth Rollins this past week's Raw, but God, it's just they have to turn him heel at this point, because one, he has a lot to offer as a heel, and two, it would just be, he's so stale right now, it would just be such a refreshing change of pace. That's what happens. It's just, so I guess to answer your question, at the end of the day, it's just, one, he has no oomph to him right now, and two, they just keep putting him in just such repetitive storylines, and it's just the same thing every single time. And not to mention the wackiness, just like the little stupid comedy, it's just, it's done. Like, it's just, it's not working for him. Thoughts on Chris Jericho's 2016-2017 run? One of the best of his career, and it proves just how great of a character Jericho is, because especially now, considering how his in-ring work is slowing down and he's not moving as fast as he used to, and he wasn't the wrestler that he used to be, he has to rely on his character. He has to rely on a lot of other things. He has to think outside the box, and he was able to get all these things over, like the scarf and the list of Jericho and stuff like that. And you really think about it for a bit, it's not like Jericho just suddenly struck gold. Jericho's always been this brilliant. Not to suck his dick or anything, but Jericho, going back to WCW when he was just allowed to do whatever he wanted in the cruiserweight division, and Jericho always had really funny ideas. He was always very funny. He was always very witty. He had a good sense of humor, and it was this kind of stuff where just you can tell that they were giving him more freedom, especially, compared to all the other guys on the roster. And the thing about it is, Jericho had a lot of comedic moments that you could tell he just thought of right off the bat. I mean, the whole thing with like him doing the umbrella spot with Jack Gallagher at the Royal Rumble, and there was that great moment in the Festival of Friendship when he said, "You're going to get," and then they went to commercial break, and they came back from commercial break, and then he said it. Like, it's just stupid stuff like that. You can tell it's just the gears turning in his head. And what was great about it is because he was so beloved, the fans kind of turned him face on his own. And, just the fact that he could also tell, I mean, like when he came back in 2016, he had that segment with the New Day, and it really wasn't anything special. It was okay. But again, it's Jericho kind of being a student in the game and realizing, like, what's working now and what's not working now. And for better or for worse, what works right now in WWE is comedy. People just can't come to see, the people with the catchphrases, and it seems like wrestling's kind of taking a back seat, and that's something that's going on with WWE. And whether it's a problem or not is up to you, and in my opinion, it is a problem. But Jericho was able to see that, and he was able to adapt to the new audience. So that's one of the reasons his runs are almost always good, because he's able to adapt and figure out what's hot, what's new, and what people want to see. And what people wanted to see at that point was a goofy Jericho. They didn't want to see the very serious best in the world Jericho. We had seen that enough. So this was a more, fun-loving and just wacky and make himself look like a fool every chance he got. So that's what I loved about this run. How would you have booked Jericho if he had gone to TNA in 2005, 2006? Assuming he came there right after he was fired, just maybe a month or two later, I mean, you got to push him right for the championship. You know what I mean? Chris Jericho probably would have been the best WWE talent they had at that time. I mean, sure, you could say they had Sting, who was probably a bigger star than Jericho, but Sting, as we know, hadn't been in WWE yet, and they had homegrown talent like AJ Styles and stuff like that. But as far as WWE acquisitions, that would have been the biggest ones. You cannot not have him win the title. And from what I can see, I'm looking at my Impact Champ. Well, at this point, it would have been the NWA Championship, right? Because the Impact Championship wasn't made till like 07, 08, I thought. So I believe Raven was the champion by the time Jericho had left WWE in August of 2005. And what I think I would do is I'd have Jericho debut, and I'd have him wrestle guys, maybe have people come out of the X division, and have him wrestle guys like Daniels, Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, and then I think I would have him face Christian Cage at Slammiversary for the TNA Championship or NWA Championship. Instead of doing, I think they did a King of the Mountain match they did a King of the Mountain match at Slammiversary, and Jeff Jarrett won the NWA Championship. I think Christian, being the newly crowned champion, could have fought a babyface Jericho, and because Jericho was going to be a face if he went down there, and because Christian and Jericho have that history of being tag partners and they were rivals at one point, they know each other very well, they can bounce off each other very easily. I think that would have been a great world title feud for TNA. Obviously, Jericho didn't do that, and I don't think Jericho should have ever gone to TNA for any reason. And then I would say maybe hold the title for a bit. Maybe hold it till the end of the year. Maybe lose it to a guy like Sting. I mean, personally, I would love to see a Sting-Jericho match. It's a dream match for me. Granted, in 2006, it might not have been the greatest in the world because Sting was getting up there, but Jericho still could have gone. So he definitely would have been able to get the best out of Sting. And Sting was still having pretty good matches in TNA, so it still would have been great. But yeah, that's what I would do. Harry Ricca asked the following questions. Considering how consistently over RVD was, why did they never push him to the moon? You got me there. Rob Van Dam, when he came in like 2001, he was so over to the point where it's like when I thought about it and I was like, damn, he really could have won the Royal Rumble in 2002 and challenged for a title at WrestleMania 18. And I would have believed it. He was just stuck in the mid card. He opened up WrestleMania 18 and won the Intercontinental title, I believe. Or did he retain? I can't remember. I think he retained, now I think about it. Anyway, but RVD was definitely, he was so different, you know what I mean? Like, there was really no one like RVD. No one wore gear like his, no one had the same look. And he was just so over, and because he was so different, and he had just such a different vibe to him. But yeah, I don't know. I think RVD was a very talented wrestler. I think he could have been champion. I just don't think they saw him as main event material. Do you like Baron Corbin? He's average in the ring, and his promos are just cringe. Baron Corbin, I don't really mind. But Baron Corbin's one of those guys where it's like, whenever you kind of think about the main event picture, you're like, oh god, I gotta get something for Baron Corbin because he's not going anywhere. I don't dislike him, but I do agree sometimes his promos are cringe, and if you guys listen to Wrestling Soup, they rip him a new asshole every single week, and it's I don't want to do that to the guy. But some of the things he does, when he showed his minion tattoo, I was like, really, dude? I don't know, and just I feel like him wrestling in a t-shirt kind of shows a lot about him. And the main thing is dude, I love you, man, but you got to take the L in your hair. It just Shawn Michaels was always kind of balding. That was just a thing. But with Baron Corbin, it's really obvious, and it's just it's past to the point where it's kind of you can kind of forgive it. Sometimes when you watch Shawn Michaels wrestle, he would bend over and you'd see a bald spot, but you kind of it didn't look horrendous. You just knew it was there, so you kind of forgave it. But with Baron Corbin, it's right there, and the hairline is almost at the top of it, the back of his head, and it's just dude, you just gotta shave it. And I think it's I think maybe if he shaved his head, kind of got in a little bit better shape, kind of got a little bit more ripped, and a new look, he kind of debuted a new look for himself that could take him places. It could just be a change, and maybe he works on his promo skills a bit. I've heard on Talking Smack he does pretty well for himself. But I mean, then again, you can really only go so far on Talking Smack. I hear that a lot, oh, he's great on Talking Smack. It's all right, he's great on that show, but it's got to translate to TV. You know what I mean? And granted, some of this might be oh, they're giving him bad material. That might be the case, but I don't know. Just sometimes, he really hasn't impressed me a whole lot. And there's really, aside from being tall, I mean, there's really nothing else there. I mean, he's not jacked. He has bad hair. I think a head shave would be the best move for the guy. And again, I'm not trying to knock him personally. Dude, I understand the struggles, male pattern baldness. It sucks. But it looks bad. You know what I mean? You got to change it. But yeah, so that's what I would say about Baron Corbin. I think he's all right. I don't see him as a WWE champion, which he probably will be considering he's the Money in the Bank holder. But as of right now, he really hasn't done anything to really set the world on fire. Okie dokie, PrinceofStrongStyle9 V2 asked the following questions. 1. Who is the best in the world right now? Okada or Omega? Personally, man, I'm going to say Okada. Omega might be my favorite of the two, but I think Okada, he is just such a god, you know what I mean? He's so fucking cool, and he's just putting on these classic matches after classic matches. And the thing about Okada is I feel like I've been a fan of his, a diehard fan of his, a little longer than Kenny Omega. I feel like Kenny Omega's hot right now, if that makes sense. But ever since, I really started getting into New Japan around Wrestle Kingdom 9 time, and Okada has just been blowing me away ever since then. And the whole story of him losing at Wrestle Kingdom 9 and coming back at Wrestle Kingdom 10. I keep wanting to say WrestleMania. At Wrestle Kingdom 10 to beat Tanahashi, that story was so great. And Okada's just he's so awesome. Not only is he so awesome in the ring, but he's such a great talker, and he's got such great emotion into his matches. And Kenny Omega does too, don't get me wrong. Omega is number 2, definitely behind Okada at number 1. What career are you pursuing? I'm currently a theater major in college, but not just theater. Theater's great, and it's the thing that I feel most confident myself in. That's why I majored in it. but I always want to do other things too. You know, I really kind of like doing, you know, YouTube and stuff like that. And I'm not saying I'm going to make YouTube my career or anything, but you know, I would love to do podcasts. I'd love to do radio, kind of as like a thing on the side. I'm also a writer. I do a lot of writing, also kind of like journalist wise and like, you know, creative writing. More focused on creative writing. So I am a theater major, but I really would also like to dive into a lot of other different creative outlets, mainly writing. And again, I would love, you know, to have a big old YouTube channel that I could profit off of. But as of right now, you know, that's not the case. But then again, you know, things can change. Personally, you know, honestly, I always wanted to be a wrestler, but because of my health problems I've talked about my health problems beforehand, but for those of you who don't know, I have osteoporosis, which stemmed from anorexia, and osteoporosis basically means severe bone loss in like bone density, I should say. And it's very common in postmenopausal women, and I'm not a postmenopausal woman, but then again, it stemmed from anorexia. And if I were a wrestler, you know, I couldn't be able to, like, I can't do any sort of physical activity. And you know, if I were a wrestler, I would take a bump and I'd break a bone. You know what I mean? And I'd be the worst wrestler ever. I'd get injured every single match. So I'd just be an injury-prone asshole, and I would not be able to be a wrestler. But I would love to. You know, acting to me is the second best thing. Yeah, I really that's what kind of kills me on the inside is, you know, I'm great at public speaking and I'm a great actor. So I really feel like I could have been a great wrestler, you know what I mean? I feel like I definitely would have been able to. I feel like I had the athleticism to be a wrestler. I feel like had I been properly trained, I would have been able to really kind of pick up the moves and everything. So, you know, it's something I really don't talk about a lot, but I really honestly feel like I could have been a great wrestler. Would I've been, you know, WWE champion? I don't know. But the other thing is, I'm tall. I'm 6'3". You know what I mean? Like I had everything going for me. It's just unfortunately, just my health is a problem, and that sucks. I'm really skinny, sure, but again, I was also anorexic. So what are you gonna do about it? Um, but yeah, so I would have loved to have been a wrestler, and I really had a lot of things going for me, but just again, just cards I was dealt. So again, acting second best thing for me. Still kind of gets across what I want to do, which is perform and everything. And I would again love to be a writer, love to be an author. Hell, I'd even love to. I also sometimes think about like sometimes would love to work for like, you know, Wrestling Observer and stuff like that, and do radio shows. I think it would be so awesome if, you know, Brian Alvarez became the next Dave Meltzer, and I became the next Brian. You know what I mean? Like I really look up to guys like that, and I really enjoy, you know, guys on the radio like Brian Alvarez and stuff like that. So I think it would be cool to kind of pursue a career in that. And I've always been thinking about minoring in different things and double majoring. So as of right now, I'm just a theater major, and that's the main career I'm pursuing. But I've always have a bunch of things on the side that I really want to do. What are some of your favorite films? I had to think about this a lot because I've seen a lot of movies, but I really don't hold any of them as my favorite. The only ones I can think of off the top of my head, you know, I really enjoy. If I had to pick a favorite movie of all time, I think I would pick Nightmare Before Christmas. I watch that movie constantly. I love it. It's so much fun. It's just, and I love Tim Burton. He's awesome. I love the art style. I love the aesthetic. I love the songs in it. It's just a very, and it's so nostalgic for me. I watched it all the time as a kid, and I still watch it all the time as an adult. In terms of other movies, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I love all the Star Wars movies, even the prequels. I love the prequels too. Any of you can fight me on that. I'm not saying they're the best of the bunch. I do think three is very, very good. One and two, I would say those are the bottom. If I had to rank my Star Wars movies, I probably do Episode 2, Episode 1, Episode 6, Episode 3, Episode 7, Episode 4, Episode 5. I think that's how I would do the ranking. Last Jedi looks really, really awesome. I can't wait for that one. In terms of other movies, I really do like all the Toy Story movies. I think those are great. Perks of Being a Wallflower, I really enjoyed that movie. Chronicle, that one might not be as known. If you haven't seen it, it is really fun. It's about these kids who it's filmed in, you know, like through one kid's camera lens, but they discover like this ancient crystal and they get superpowers, and it's really awesome. So those are a few. I know there are more that you know will eventually come to my head, but those right now are the ones I also really loved. I mean, we have an influx of superhero movies, so I could just list off a bunch of those 'cause I think all the ones like the Marvel Cinematic Universe are great. But my two favorite superhero movies in this recent boom we've had, I really liked Captain America: Civil War. That was awesome. But I think my favorite of the bunch has been Guardians of the Galaxy 1. I really, really love that movie. And it was just, I love it so much. So, your next question. Would you rather fight a bear-sized fish or a fish-sized bear? As far as I know, a bear-sized fish, that's essentially a shark. So, fuck that. I think I'm going to do the fish-sized bear. Because the thing is, with the bear-sized fish, now here's the thing. You didn't specify this, I'm going to have to call you out on it. Am I in the water if I'm fighting the the bear-sized fish? Because if I'm in the water with a bear-sized fish, I'm not doing it at all because I'm out of my element. If I'm fighting the fish-sized bear, I'm going to be on dry land, and I'm much more mobile on dry land. So I'm going to do the fish-sized bear. That's what I'm going to do. Favorite music bands? Any songs or albums you recommend? Dude, oh man, of course I got stuff for you. Of course I have recommendations. So favorite music bands, if I had to give you a quick top 5, and again, this is always changing. Always changing. I'll give you a top 6. Because I'm going to say number 6 is Palais Royale. They're a new band. I recently discovered them. But I have a feeling if they continue on the trend they're going, and if they continue putting out great music like they have, they only have one EP out and a full-length album out. And if they continue doing stuff of this caliber, they're going to be one of my favorite bands of all time. This band is awesome. I love their song, Where's the Boom? It's just a fucking great song. Ma Chérie, it's a fucking great song. I love it so much. It's been my favorite song for the past couple months. I just keep listening to it and keep listening to it. I'm also a big fan of Paramore. I love Paramore. I've been with them since, the Misery Business days in 2007. Paramore, to me, their most recent album, After Laughter, it's been all right. I haven't enjoyed it as much as the other albums. I will say, I do think it's better than their debut album, but After Laughter has been okay. But, their self-titled album, Brand New Eyes, and Riot, those are 3 great albums that you should check out. What's great about their self-titled album is I think that they've proven how you can write great pop music. You know what I mean? I know a lot of people hate on pop music nowadays, but, some of their songs like Still Into You and Ain't It Fun, those are very poppy songs, but they're still enjoyable and they still have a lot of music behind them. Sometimes pop songs are just electronic or they just have no oomph to them. These songs are clearly written with care, and I enjoy them very, very much. So I will definitely say Paramore, one of my favorite bands. Number 4, All Time Low, I mentioned them earlier. All Time Low, they've had hit or miss albums with me. Last Young Renegade, their most recent album, I wasn't too high on. Dirty Work, another one of their albums, it's okay. Not a big fan of it. But, albums like So Wrong It's Right, Nothing Personal, Don't Panic, those are 3 excellent albums, such great songs. If I had to give you any song from... Oh, I didn't give you a song from Paramore. Paramore, I say my favorite song from them. For a pessimist, I'm pretty optimistic. That's a really, really good song that I think you should check out. Still Into You, a very, very awesome song. Crush, Crush, Crush. Those are other great recommendations. All Time Low, Lost in Stereo, a great song. Stella, a wonderful song. Dear Maria, Count Me In, it's one of their most famous songs. And my personal favorite, For Baltimore, a fucking awesome song. Number 3, I'm going to say Pierce the Veil is a very, very underrated but very awesome band. They kind of have a post-hardcore sound to them. There's a little bit of screaming in there. Very, very fun, very talented. I saw them live a couple months ago. Such a great show. Some of my favorite songs from them, and literally all their albums are good. They've had 4 albums. All of them are awesome. Floral Unfading is one of my favorite songs from them. Bulls in the Bronx, King for a Day. Paraphernalia is one of their famous songs. It's all right. I enjoy a lot of their other songs more. Hell Above, Sky Under the Sea, The Balcony Scene, Dive In. There's just so many great songs to name. Number 2, Panic at the Disco, a very nostalgic band for me. I've been with them since the very beginning, since 2005 with The Fever You Can't Sweat Out, which I still believe is their best album. Panic at the Disco has evolved to the point where it's just a one-man band now, and Brendan Urie is like Heath Slater. He's a one-man band. And their albums, they vary from time to time. Brendan Urie always changes the sound. To me, the first, the third, and the 5th album, which is Fever You Can't Sweat Out, Vices and Virtues, and Death of a Bachelor, those are the best albums to me. Pretty Odd, I do enjoy from time to time. Some of the songs I think are kind of forgettable on that album. Some of the songs kind of blend together. And their 4th album, Too Weird to Live, Too Rare to Die, it's all right. There's some songs I like, and then some songs I really just don't like at all. So I think that's their weakest album. But if you wanted some awesome Panic at the Disco music, check out albums 1, 3, and 5. Those are the best ones. And number 1, for those of you who know me, this is number 1, My Chemical Romance, my favorite band of all time. Just so many great songs. They only have 4 studio albums, but I love all 4 of them. But more specifically, I like The Black Parade, iconic album, and a lot of My Chemical Romance fans will say that's the best album, and there's very little reason to argue against that. But in my opinion, my favorite album, and in my opinion, their best album, is Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge, their second album. So many great songs. Literally every single song on that album I will recommend to you. It is a great. If you're going to listen to anything I just spewed on about, listen to My Chemical Romance's Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge. Amazing album. Do you ever find yourself listening to songs and scores from movies and TV shows? Trust me, I always do. Not really from movies and TV shows. I will say I do listen to a lot of video game music, especially when I'm writing. I kind of have like a little playlist of writing music when I'm writing, like, I don't know, creative writing or an essay or anything like that for school. I like a lot of Zelda music because it's very atmospheric, so it's not like it takes away my attention, but it kind of fills in, you know, it kind of drowns me out from my surroundings, so I don't hear anything going on around me, but I can hear this, atmospheric music. But I do like a lot of other soundtracks. Obviously Kingdom Hearts is one of my favorite. It's probably, when it comes to Kingdom Hearts, definitely one of my favorite soundtracks. As you know, I put Kingdom Hearts music in all of my videos, so that's your explanation right there. I will say when it comes to movies and TV shows, I do listen to a lot of anime openings. I'm a big anime fan, so there's half the fun of watching an anime is listening to the opening song. And My Hero Academia has some great openings. I love the Toradora opening. That's just to name a few. Full Metal Alchemist has great openings, and of course Attack on Titan. Those openings are so fucking awesome. So I'll listen to those from time to time. But I rarely listen to scores from movies and TV shows. But I will listen to video game music if that kind of counts. Who are your top 5 favorite film directors, and you want the best film from each director? So it was kind of hard for me to think about that because I was like, damn, I really haven't like thought about film directors, so I kind of had to like sit down and think about it for a bit. But I came up with the top 5 for you. Coming in at number 5, I'll say Stanley Kubrick, and I'll say his favorite film of mine is probably The Shining. Number 4, Alfred Hitchcock. Obviously Psycho. I mean, I hate to be basic, but I mean that's what it's got to be. Number 3, I did Quentin Tarantino. I had a lot of great things to choose from. I was going to say Pulp Fiction, but I think I like Inglourious Basterds just a little bit more. It's just a lot more fun for me to watch. Number 2, I'm going to say Steven Spielberg, and if I'm going to pick one, I think I'm going to pick Jurassic Park. I just, really love that movie. And number 1, I'm going to say Tim Burton. Now, with Tim Burton, I was going to say, his best movie. Obviously, it's going to be Nightmare Before Christmas, but he technically isn't the director for Nightmare Before Christmas. He's just the producer. So, I think for my favorite movie directed by Tim Burton, I'm probably going to say Edward Scissorhands. I really like that movie. If I think of anything more, I'll tell you. But I also really liked Corpse Bride. But again, I think that was Tim Burton was the director of The Corpse Bride. Now I got a decision to make. I think I'm going to put Corpse Bride. I don't know. But, Nightmare Before Christmas, again, he's not technically a director, so I can't count that one. So I guess I'll say Edward Scissorhands is my favorite one from him. Have you ever seen popular shows such as Game of Thrones? If so, what's the true appeal of the show? I'm a huge Game of Thrones fan. I absolutely love Game of Thrones. What's the appeal of the show? A lot of things. For one, the acting is very, very good. You have a lot of compelling scenes, a lot of compelling characters, and you have a lot of lovable characters like Daenerys Targaryen, Jon Snow, Arya Stark, and you have a lot of hateable characters. Joffrey Baratheon was a hateable character, and then you have characters that are so hateable that you love them, like Cersei Lannister. You have a lot of character progression too. Sansa was just you hated her. She would always side with Joffrey. Sansa Stark was one of the just most unlikable characters, and as the season progressed, Sansa has become one of the most likable characters. And you have just horrible people like Ramsay, just a lot of compelling characters that drive a lot of emotion out of you. You really have a sympathy for a lot of wonderful characters, and then it's so crazy. Like, it's kind of like, to borrow a term from wrestling, a lot of characters have heel and face turns on this show. Some characters are natural born heels, and you have some people who just are baby faces, and you have tweeners. Like the Hound is one of my favorite characters in the show. He's the right hand executioner of the king, and he would always do Joffrey Baratheon's bidding. He would kill a lot of innocent people. He was responsible for the death of the butcher's boy in season 1. but you know deep down that he truly cares about those, you know, that he loves, and you could tell that he really grew to love Arya Stark when he was with her, and, you know, he protected her from Brienne after Brienne just pummeled him to death. That was a great fight, Brienne versus the Hound, wonderful. And, you know, and violence, again, is also going to be a driving factor, and there's a lot of great things to look forward to. I'm looking forward to Daenerys Targaryen finally, you know, confronting Cersei Lannister, and, you know, Brienne is definitely going to go one-on-one with the Mountain, and that's going to be just insane. So I think it's character driven, but, you know, there's also just a lot of pomp and circumstance, a lot of fantasy to the world, you know, all the dragons and everything. It's very, very enjoyable. The battles are great. It's a very, very fun show to watch. And the plot is complex, but it's very easy to follow, if that makes sense. You know, it's expert storytelling. The books, you know, the source material is great. I've never read any of the books, but from what I've heard, they are just phenomenal. So you already have great source material from the start, and you got phenomenal actors too. You Kit Harington, Emilia Clarke, just to name a few. Lena Headey, she's just awesome. Just so many great actors, and it's just the other thing that Game of Thrones is notorious for is just no one's safe. And, you know, you get attached to these characters. Like, you know, Ned Stark was the main protagonist of season 1, and he was killed in episode 9 of season 1. And it's just, you know, you get hooked on these people. And the Red Wedding, like, who could forget the Red Wedding? You know, these characters, these 3 massively important characters just die right in front of you. And obviously the most tragic deaths are whenever a direwolf dies. But, you know, just a lot goes into those shows. And I mean, I just kind of rambled on for a couple minutes about why I love Game of Thrones, and there you go. If you could live in a fictional world, such as from a TV show or movie, which would you be able to live in, i.e. Star Wars, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, etc.? So if you're limiting this just to TV shows or movies, I think Star Wars would be pretty badass, just because I'd want to be a Jedi. That'd be pretty fucking awesome. But if we can do any sort of fictional world, dude, I'm fucking becoming a Pokemon trainer in the Pokemon world. That is the one thing I'd want to do, man. Pokemon is the best world to live in. That would be so, you don't even know how awesome that would be. I would just, if any fictional world is up for grabs, dude, I'm going to the Kanto region. I'm grabbing my Charmander from Professor Oak, and we are going on an adventure. So that would be the best. Number 10, ever thought of doing any videos, collections, or whatever you have, such as movies or wrestling DVDs? You know what? Let's just do a wrestling collection video. Let's just do it right now.
Alright guys, so let's kind of dive right into my little wrestling corner that I have in my room here. So showing you off a couple of my posters. Here's the WrestleMania 1 card. It's from the Ultimate Poster Collection that WWE produced a few years ago. I have a few other ones that I use in my dorm room at school. But here's the Sgt. Pepper Attitude Era poster. I always liked this one. It was really, really cool. I like how they parodied the Beatles here. Here are a few figures. We have these two just, you know, random action figures, Dolph Ziggler and Daniel Bryan. These are just gag gifts, you know, around Christmas time. My parents will just, as a joke, they just got me these two things just, you know, to laugh. And it was just, you know, funny because I'd always get wrestling action figures for Christmas when I was a little kid. So it was just my mom being like, oh, you know, when you were a kid and now you're 20, yada, yada, yada. Just stuff like that. And then I have some pop figures. I have the Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker still in the box. And I got a Daniel Bryan one. I usually take this to school and leave it on my desk, so this one's out of the box. And then with this Sting action figure, both my brothers got me the Sting pop figure as a Christmas gift. So I took one out of the box and brought it to my dorm, and I left one here. And then I also have the GameStop exclusive Wolfpack Sting and a Sting poster. And this, Continue the Hold. For those of you who don't know, WCW released like a Nitro playing, like trading card game. And my brother actually knew how to play, I think, and he would get booster packs and everything. And any card that had Sting on it, those were the only cards I cared about. I didn't know how to actually play the game. I was only like, 4 when it came out. I'm more of a Yu-Gi-Oh guy, for those of you who are worried about my TCG hobbies. But any card that had Sting on it, he would give to me just because I like the pictures. So this is my little Sting shrine right here. And I have the Bret Hart Simpsons guest star action figure. I don't know really how expensive or valuable this thing is, but I found it at a random toy shop when I was in Ellicott City, Maryland. And I keep it in the box because I really don't have any use for it taking out of the box, so I just kind of keep it stored away in this corner. This little wristband right here is a John Cena wristband. It was a wristband that I actually caught. He was wearing this one. I was in one of the front rows, and he just threw it out, and I caught it, so that was kind of cool. I kind of had to snipe it away from a little girl. I felt bad about that, but, for the sake of memorabilia. And these are some SummerSlam cups. I kind of miss these, the Big Gulp SummerSlam cups. These were always fun when I was a kid. There's Miz, Edge. I got 2 Edge cups, and Shawn Michaels. And this is Mr. Sacco right here from the McFoley DVD. And right here are a few of my SummerSlam tickets, so that's pretty cool. And I got some books. We got Daniel Bryan's book and 2 of Chris Jericho's books. And we have Hog Wild 96 on VHS. Not the worst WCW pay-per-view to own. This has that awesome match with Malenko and Benoit. So that's a really, really good match. And then here are my DVDs. I got a plethora of them. You know, this is pre-network days. So before the network, I spent all my, money that I'd get from my birthday and Christmas and allowance and all that. I'd spend it all on WWE DVDs. And there was a phase where I was looking for the most valuable ones. So here's a quick glimpse at a few of them. I actually found Rebellion in 2001 because there were a few stores. There was one store in my area in College Park, Maryland. It's called CD Depot, and it was basically like, people would sell back their old DVDs, and that's where I found WWF Rebellion there, and I found WWF Survivor Series 2001. There it is right there in the blue. I found that at an FYE, and Suncoast too, for those of you who remember that store. And these little WrestleMania DVDs right here, WrestleMania 7, 8, let's see, I have 6, 7, 8, 12, and 14. This came out, I think, around the time of WrestleMania 29, so a year before the network. And this was, again, pre-network days, so these DVDs were pretty awesome, but they're literally just the event ripped right onto a blank disc. Like, if I were to open these up, it would literally just be a blank disc. They don't even have a picture on them. So here are some other WrestleManias. There's WrestleMania 19, 20, 21, 22. There's 23, 24, 25, 26, 28, 29. And then after 29, everything was on the network, so I didn't bother buying anything. So again, here's some more compilations. Literally any DVD you're going to find, it's pre-network. So, and there they are right there. There's Tombstone. That's a good DVD. The McFoley ones. There's the Ric Flair ones. Those are the Rocks. We got the Goldberg DVD. We got the Punk DVD. We got that was one of the Sting TNA DVDs. I found that at CD Depot. And we got Edge, and we got Triple H. And then over here we got the Shawn Michaels DVDs. The Bret Hart. This Bret Hart one, the first one they did, was really, really awesome. Shawn Michaels vs. Bret Hart. That's one of my favorite DVDs ever. And of course, Breaking the Code, Behind the Walls of Chris Jericho. A great documentary, a great DVD. So yeah. And the coup de grace of everything, my favorite wrestling memorabilia, is this baseball bat signed by Sting. It's in this nice little case here. This was actually a gift from my brother when I was obviously one of the groomsmen at his wedding, and this was his big present to me. He got my brother Beats headphones, and then he got me this Sting baseball bat. So between my brother and I, he gave me the better gift. So definitely. So that's about it. So I hope you guys like that.
All right, Weapon Alex, the next set of questions. What indie wrestler should never join WWE? I was thinking about this for a bit, and honestly, when I was looking through the names, I was really trying to think of like a good wrestler that really doesn't need WWE or shouldn't go. And really, I can see a lot of guys fitting into WWE's image, especially since WWE has kind of broadened their horizons on what they see as a true star. That being said, and again, I was also having trouble defining an indie star because it's like with the prevalence of like New Japan, Ring of Honor, and TNA, like, can those really be considered indie wrestlers? And I kind of let it slide. I kind of used indie a little loosely here. So the person I chose was Davey Richards. And my thing about Richards is the reason I don't think he should be in WWE is just because I feel like he might just blend in. And while a lot of wrestlers like, similar to his style or similar to his look have made it in WWE, because there's there's almost like a surplus of talent in WWE. There's almost too many guys. I could see him easily getting lost in the shuffle. And I mean, I do like Davey Richards. He's had really, really great matches, and I've always, I wouldn't call myself like a diehard Davey Richards fan. I would just kind of say I've always respected him. Like, I've always seen him as a good wrestler. But really, there's nothing to write home about. And I don't know if Davey Richards were to debut in WWE, if he would get one of those, monumental reactions like an AJ Styles did when he showed up at the Royal Rumble. Now, granted, it is kind of unfair comparing AJ Styles to Davey Richards, but if you get what I'm saying, I don't think he has such a outside following to the point where, him showing up in WWE will just completely, the crowd will erupt and go insane and want Davey Richards in the title picture. You know what I mean? I don't see him going very far, and I just think he can have a great success just being one of those guys who is like, yeah, I was this champion, this champion, this champion, and I never joined WWE. Your next question, who deserves to debut in WWE without going to NXT? Gotta be Kenny Omega, right? I mean, like, absolutely on fire right now, having amazing matches, unbelievable charisma, and with his whole association with the Bullet Club, he has instant feuds with guys like AJ. I mean, hell, he completely booted AJ Styles out of the Bullet Club. That's your first feud right there. I mean, they have unfinished business from Japan. And you can bring that up to say these two left on bad terms. When AJ left Japan, Kenny Omega stabbed him in the back. So, I mean, just think about when AJ Styles was kicked out of the Bullet Club. And, like Finn Balor, there's an association there because of the Bullet Club. So he already has guys that will already kind of be linked to him. And he's already fluent in English. And I always felt like, Shinsuke Nakamura didn't really need to come up. He didn't really need to go through NXT. He could have instantly come up to the main roster. I guess the only reason they wanted to keep him down there was so he could learn some English. And even though his English is still he still has a very thick accent, he doesn't really need to talk all that much. Because like when Nakamura came out on NXT TakeOver Dallas, like he was instantly the most charismatic man on that entire roster. Like, he came out and without saying a word, he instantly solidified himself as a star. So he didn't really need NXT either. But with Kenny Omega, I mean, even though he's a guy from Japan, he's Canadian. He's fluent in English and he can speak perfect English. He has amazing mic skills. He's a great wrestler. He does not need any sort of help blending in. He will fit perfectly. He will fit perfectly in WWE. As again, with anyone that goes to WWE, he'll do great so long as WWE doesn't WWE-fy him, if you know what I mean. Question 3, does Cena deserve to break Ric Flair's record? At this point, I say why not. Honestly, I agree with you. It's a matter of just taste. I mean, people are going to be like, oh no, Cena sucks, yada yada. I honestly think people have lightened up on Cena. If you've noticed, when Cena came back those couple weeks on SmackDown, he's been getting big cheers. John Cena is a lot more beloved now by the fans, and I know he's still going to always have people that don't like him, but that's with every wrestler. And the thing with Ric Flair's record is, sure, 16 is the official number, but I mean, there's so many stories, and I mean, like Dave Meltzer said, like Ric Flair has like title wins in the 20s. And it's not to say John Cena is like a jabroni. Like, John Cena has been the face of the company for years. He's had great matches, and he's done a lot of work for the company. So it's not like they're putting it on someone who doesn't someone who's kind of just like a no-name in wrestling. They just randomly gave 17 title wins to some dude. Now granted, some of John Cena's title wins did not need to happen, but still, with the cards they were dealt, I mean, John Cena isn't the worst person to break Ric Flair's title record. Your next question, should Gallows and Anderson split? I don't think so at all. I think that'd be the worst thing for them. They are better together. If they're apart, you just got two bald dudes on the roster. And I think they work well together. I think they're a good team. Honestly, WWE needs tag teams. I never understood why they split their tag teams up. I always thought it would be a good idea if maybe on like Raw they had a women's division and on SmackDown they had a tag team division. I know that might seem like, oh, you're segregating. Like, I think people might make an issue of like, oh, well, the men get to have a brand split. How come the women don't get to have a brand split? And the fact of the matter is, even though like there are healthy women's divisions, like a healthy number, I still think they're suffering from a lack of competitors. I mean, like the SmackDown women's roster is basically like 6 or 7 women. I think it's 6, and they've had 2 5-women matches in the same time. Like, you're seeing the same matches all the time. At least if all the women were on one show, they could have fresh matches. And sure, some women might not get as much airtime, but like on Raw, it's for a while it was the Alexa Bliss show. Like Sasha Banks is starting to kind of come up from the rubble after they kind of buried her a little bit, and Bayley is just buried far beneath the earth, and they're trying to resurrect her a bit. So I think if they had, and I mean, Raw's a 3-hour show, and even then, it's still just dragging on and on. If you had like, there's a lot of great women's wrestlers. If you had like, every hour on Raw, you could have a really great women's match. You could have, Sasha and Bayley, and then Charlotte and Natalya, and maybe, Alexa Bliss and Naomi. I'm just naming like 3 random matches you could have that would probably be really, really good and make Raw go faster. And then on SmackDown, you could have a bunch of same principle. You can have a bunch of different tag teams. You could have the Revival, Hardys, Gallows and Anderson, the Usos, New Day. If all these guys were together, I feel like you'd have a bunch of fresh matches. We're going to get New Day versus the Usos, for a bunch of consecutive pay-per-views. And there's nothing wrong with that being a title program, but I would at least like to see more tag teams. So I always thought that that would have been a better idea just for the sake of, not being repetitive, but I understand some issues with that. Some people might not think that it's the best idea, and it also adds more titles to the mix, which is something I just don't think you need. So I got on a really weird tangent there, but to answer your question, no, Gallows and Anderson should not split. Number 5, if Daniel Bryan returns to the WWE ring, who should he face? Selfishly, I want to say guys like Shinsuke Nakamura or AJ Styles or just a great wrestler on the roster. Maybe a John Cena match or maybe Seth Rollins or something like that. But the reality of the situation is, if Daniel Bryan were to wrestle again, like if Daniel Bryan were in perfect health and there were nothing wrong with him, I would say Shinsuke Nakamura. That would be my number one choice. However, considering Daniel Bryan's health, if he was able to get himself cleared for one match, I would say The Miz. That would be the perfect match. Miz, I really can't see The Miz hurting anyone. And it makes sense considering the storyline. So even though it wouldn't be the greatest match in the world, it might not be the greatest match to end your career on, it would at least be a satisfying payoff, and it would be a satisfying payoff to a story that was building and brewing for all those times that Miz was on SmackDown. So I would say The Miz, just considering our situation. All right, Hitman Fan 683, best pay-per-view from 1990 to 1995. I'm going to keep this strictly North American, and I'm going to go right down the list. 1990, I have Wrestle War. 1991, I have WrestleMania 7. This was a big tie between WrestleMania 7 and Wrestle War in 1991. The Wrestle War 1991 main event, that War Games match, is really awesome, but I just love WrestleMania 7. I think it's probably one of the most underrated WrestleManias, and it's really fun to watch. So I'm going to give the nod to WrestleMania 7. 1992, I have Wrestle War. I have to give it to Wrestle War. It was really close between Wrestle War and Super Brawl 2. Super Brawl 2 is one of my favorite WCW matches with Jushin Liger and Brian Pillman. But Wrestle War, it's got that Dangerous Alliance versus Sting Squadron's War Games match, which is not only the best War Games match, one of the best WCW matches in history. So I got to give the nod to Wrestle War. 1993, we have Super Brawl 3. Fantastic show, a very fun show. 1994, I have WrestleMania 10. I know a while back in my WrestleMania reviews, I gave this rating a 7.5, but that's when I was dumb and was concerned about star ratings, and I didn't realize how great of a show WrestleMania 10 is till I rewatched it. And I would give WrestleMania 10, I'd put it in maybe even that's definitely in the top 10 range for WrestleManias. One of the greatest WrestleManias there's ever been. I give it a 4. It's got to be, at the very least, like an 8.5 out of 10. I gave it like a 7.5. It's way too low. Maybe you can go as far as saying 9. Very good show. And 1995, I would say Starrcade. Starrcade 95. That whole Japan versus WCW thing was really cool. I really liked all the matches on there. It was a very fun show. So I will say Starrcade is the best pay-per-view of 1995. Not that WWE did not give any sort of competition to WCW in terms of pay-per-views that month, but Starrcade was definitely a fun show to watch. Can you do a playlist for pay-per-view per year? Yeah, I can sort that out for you, no problem. You might have to give me a little bit of time to do that because I'm really bad at organizing shit, but I can definitely do that for you. Can you do a rebooking video? Yeah, dude, sure. Just drop any show you want me to rebook, and I will do it for you. My only thing is probably just keep it to WWE only because that's probably where my best knowledge lies. Like, I could try WCW if you want me to, but the problem is, I really have to do some hardcore research. But with WWE, I probably have more creative ideas. And finally, thoughts on Russo and Cornette. The thing with Russo and Cornette is, it was funny for a bit, when, you'd mention Vince Russo's name and Jim Cornette would go ballistic and all that, and it was funny watching him rant and everything. But now it's just gotten to the point where it's just like, one, it's old, and two, it's like, Jim Cornette seems so washed up in this hatred for Vince Russo that, it's clouding everything he's ever done in his wrestling career. At this rate, Jim Cornette's not going to be known as, this great booker or this great manager. He's just going to be known as the dude who couldn't shut the fuck up about how much he hated Vince Russo. So to me, Russo really, sure, Russo, he's getting the butt of all the jokes. So that kind of sucks for him. But this is really hurting Jim Cornette, too, because it's just turning him from, a wrestling legend to just a bitter old dude who just can't get over the fact that there was one idiot in the wrestling business. And there are plenty of... Jim Cornette doesn't hate exclusively Vince Russo. He hates a lot of other people. He hates Kevin Dunn, Ed Ferrara, Jim Herd, like he hates those people. And it's like Jim Cornette's blood pressure has to be through the fucking roof. Like this guy is just, he needs to just chill. And it's like I want him to stop this whole hatred thing just for the sake of his own well-being, because he's gonna fucking blow a gasket one day and he's just gonna fucking die because he's so wrapped up in this hatred. So yeah, I mean, other than that, it's just two dudes who just can't shut up and just they're so wrapped up in their own philosophies on wrestling that there's no pleasing the other side. So that's all I got to say about them. All right, Diesel 101 Raw. Your following questions are: if you were a wrestler, would you rather feud with Jericho or team with Jericho? If I had a choice between the two, I think I would definitely want to feud with Jericho. Just the idea of going back and forth on the mic and, you know, just like having great matches with Jericho. I think that would be really, really awesome if I were a wrestler. Teaming with him would be great too, but just the idea of, you know, just getting in there. And Jericho's always a great storyteller. He puts a lot of thoughts into his matches. So, you know, being able to construct a match, especially if I'm like a newcomer and, you know, there's kind of Jericho to mentor me, having this guy who knows a lot about wrestling, is very knowledgeable and very creative and thinks outside the box a lot and is very smart, having him kind of, you know, craft together a match for you, and, you know, you can learn a lot. You can learn a lot teaming with him too, but, you know, just if you're a singles wrestler, if you aspire to be a singles wrestler, then feuding with someone like that can definitely help your career. So I would definitely say feud with Jericho. Have you met Chris Jericho yet? Unfortunately, no. I like how you put yet, because that will happen one day. But no, I have not met Chris Jericho. I've only met a handful of wrestlers. I went to, as you guys know, when I went to WrestleMania 30, I went to WrestleMania Access, and I met a few guys. I met Christian, that was cool. I met AJ Lee, I met the Usos, that was nice. I met Sean Waltman and Bob Backlund. So, yeah, those are the guys I met. I mean, for what it was worth, I thought those were cool wrestlers to meet. You know, I'm a big Christian fan. Bob Backlund was insane. Sean Waltman was really, really cool. So, yeah, and then AJ Lee was nice, too, and the Usos were cool, too. So, I mean, no complaints there. But I don't even think Chris Jericho wasn't at WrestleMania 30, period, but I don't even think he was at Access. So I wouldn't have had a chance to, considering what I've done. But, yeah, one day, hopefully. Chris Jericho decides a wrestler in another promotion for a one-off. Would you rather see him face AJ Styles in TNA or Bryan Danielson in ROH? I'm going to say AJ Styles in TNA. Just considering how great their matches were in early 2016, I know for a fact if Jericho were younger and, you know, maybe if you were wrestling AJ Styles in 2005, I think we could have had one of the best matches of Jericho's career, one of the best matches of AJ's career even. So I think I'd rather see that. I think Daniel Bryan, I mean, you could argue the same thing about Daniel Bryan. They had that really, really great match on the first episode of NXT, and that match was only it was under 10 minutes, I think, and that was a really, really, really fun match. And Jericho, that was 2010, so Jericho was still, you know, moving around pretty well, and he was still relatively young he was young by, you know, mortality standards, by wrestling standards, he was getting a little up there in age. But, you know, all three wrestlers that we're talking about here, Styles, Danielson, and Jericho, they're all great. So, I mean, both of these matches would have been awesome, but I think he's a better fit for AJ Styles, I think. Wrestler everyone likes, but you're not a fan of. To be honest, I really don't want to dodge this question, but I really can't think of any. There are some wrestlers where, a lot of people like them, but I just kind of respect them. I don't really, cheer for them just because I'm not really into them. A prime example of this is Rey Mysterio. I respect the hell out of Rey Mysterio, totally, and I think he's one of the best of all time. But I've never, when Rey Mysterio came out, I never really got this urge to cheer. And it's not because, again, I sometimes don't like him, or I don't like, luchadors, or I don't like, his style of wrestling. Nothing like that. And I think Rey Mysterio's he's had some of my favorite matches ever. I love the match with Eddie at Halloween Havoc. And one of my favorite matches of all time is the tag team match from No Mercy with Edge and Mysterio versus Benoit and Angle. I thought he was awesome in that match. So I respect the hell out of Rey Mysterio. I think he's great. I just don't have this sort of connection that a lot of other people do. I guess in a current roster standpoint, I mean, Ty Dillinger's one. I appreciate that he got, the 10 gimmick is fun, his theme song's cool, he's got a cool look. I don't hate him personally, I don't dislike him or anything. But I mean, I just find him okay, it's Ty Dillinger. I don't really buy into the cult following that he has. Again, I appreciate what he was able to do to get himself over, but I don't have anything special to say about him. I mean, other than that, I really can't think of anything. I like a lot of people, like when I look at it, and all the people who I don't like, I think people share a similar thing. Like maybe Dolph Ziggler is another one. I used to really like Dolph Ziggler, but ever since they've just killed him over the past couple of years. But I think a lot of people are on that same thought process, like along with me. Sheamus is another one. I know a lot of people like Sheamus, but then again, I know a lot of people don't like Sheamus. So they're only kind of tolerating him now that he's with someone great as Cesaro. So those are a few, but I mean, again, there's really no one I flat out dislike that a lot of people like. I usually like almost all, great, like good to great professional wrestlers. Thoughts on Donald Trump as president? Honestly, I mean, I don't think it's good, but again, like everything that's happened so far in his presidency, I've seen coming. You know what I mean? So I feel like I was prepared for the worst when I found out he was going to get elected in November. I'm not a big Donald Trump fan. I don't think he's been. I mean, granted, it's only been a couple months, but I feel no change. You know what I mean? Like he promised all this shit, and I mean, ever since the election, I know he's been talking out of his ass. So, my other thing about Donald Trump is he just, he seems so far up his own ass. He seems like an idiot, and it just, he seems like an idiot. I know he is an idiot. Um, but I'm not a big fan of Donald Trump. And I mean, some of the things he's done, like repealing Obamacare, like I saw that coming from a mile away. I knew as soon as a Republican was getting in the White House that Obamacare was going to get repealed. But I don't want to get, too political, but those are basically my thoughts, and not nothing. I'm not a big fan. I'd rather have. I mean, I voted for Hillary Clinton. I'm not ashamed to say that or anything. But, it is what it is. I really don't feel any change. I really don't feel like there will be any change. I don't see him serving a second term. I think he'll be done by 2020. So you can just count down the days if you want. And last but not least, we have one final question from Ty Overstreet. Top 5 wrestlers of all time. Let's get number 1 out of the way right now. Number 1, Chris Jericho, my favorite wrestler of all time. You guys know the drill. I've explained a million times why Chris Jericho is my favorite wrestler of all time. And I went into this deep philosophical. If you don't remember my Q&A from last time, it was Chris Jericho themed. And I went into this whole topical discussion and this whole philosophical discussion on why Chris Jericho is my favorite. So if you ever want to know why, it's in there. But let's start at number 5. Number 5, I'll say The Undertaker. And aside from the fact that The Undertaker was a great in-ring competitor, I think what I love most about Undertaker, especially coming from like a theater major, The Undertaker had this incredible dedication to his character. You know what I mean? He, for the life of him, was going to make the idea of a deceased Undertaker a character that would work. And sure, when he debuted in 1990, it was hokey, it was wacky. That was the time where everyone was a cartoon character. But like, look at it in 2017. WWE has gone through a phase now where all their characters are reality based and all their names kind of have like a rock star vibe to them. Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn. These are all names that kind of roll off the tongue. They have like a good punch to them. They sound like a superstar's name. And amidst all this is The Undertaker, a name so wacky. No one goes by, a job title anymore. You know what I mean? An Undertaker is just, it's a job title. But because Mark Calloway, the wrestler, was so incredibly dedicated to making this gimmick work, fans, I mean, sure, you can say it was longevity, it was nostalgia, but The Undertaker had this undying dedication to making sure that his character stayed over because he was so involved in it. You actually believed, I shouldn't say you believe that The Undertaker actually had mythical powers, but because he was so involved and because he treated it like he actually was this dead guy, you actually could buy into the fact that there are some supernatural powers to The Undertaker. You could buy into the fact that the urn was just this powerful, this source of power for The Undertaker. And just the idea that in 2017, a gimmick as hokey and a gimmick as wacky can still be respected. And I mean, how many times have you been watching wrestling and you've just been so ashamed, like someone comes in and like it's something so stupid, like the Social Outcasts are on, or the Gobbledygookers walk around, and you're just like, oh my god, like this is so embarrassing, like trust me, it gets better. But if The Undertaker were to come out, this guy who is supposedly dead and has magical powers, he's one of the first wrestlers where you'd say, okay, you gotta watch this guy. That is what makes him so amazing. Something that's like so out of this world is what makes him so awesome. I don't even know if I'm explaining this properly, but I mean, aside from that, the Undertaker's had fantastic matches, and he had a great gimmick change too. Like the American Badass thing was great, and it was able to show Undertaker in a more humane light, and he was able to connect with people on so many different angles. And even though he went from being this badass biker back to the Dead Man, people were still able to buy it because he was able to buy into his own character. And just the little things he would do, like he wouldn't show up to the Hall of Fame, he would just be backstage and stuff like that. It's just the little simple things like that that made his character go such a long way. Coming in at number 4, Sting. Sting, as you all know, is the first wrestler he was the guy that really introduced me to wrestling. My older brother, he's 8 years older than me. He was a big WCW fan, and he would have, WCW videos and all that, and the thing I'd watch more than anything was Sting Back in Black. It was one of those little superstar series things that WCW would do, and I could recite that movie, I could recite it ad nauseum, you know what I mean? I could do it over and over again. I watched it every day. I had my Sting shirt, Sting mask, Sting belt, Sting championship, and I'd wrestle all my stuffed animals. Like, I was Sting, and Sting's the reason I broke my arm. For those of you who don't know, I jumped off the couch pretending I was Sting, and I broke my arm. So Sting owes me a lot. But the fact of the matter is, it's a pure nostalgia rush. You know what I mean? Like, I was able to follow Sting in TNA and his WWE run, but Sting's glory days happened before I was born. And, his career wrapped up in WCW when Sting debuted the Crow character, I was a few months old. You know what I mean? So Sting is purely for nostalgic reasons. I mean, I would have loved to witness his rise to the top because he was a great wrestler in the 80s and the early 90s and all that. So, it would have been great to see, but, from the memories I do have of Sting, they're all fond and they're all great. Coming in at number 3, Daniel Bryan. And the reason for Daniel Bryan is Daniel Bryan, growing up in this era of wrestling where everything's kind of down and some things aren't as great as they used to be, there's very few genuine reactions that you really get. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes a guy comes out and you cheer, but there was never a person like Daniel Bryan that, like, legitimately made me so excited and so happy to be a wrestling fan. You know what I mean? Like, Punk kind of did it with his pipe bomb, and that was a great moment. And I'm not, like, discrediting CM Punk for doing that because he kind of kickstarted the whole thing and got the ball rolling. But the whole thing about Daniel Bryan and the story to it of just being like, he wasn't originally in the main event, but you felt because he was just able to connect with the people so much, and the fact that you felt like you got him to the main event, there was just this feeling that you couldn't even describe. Daniel Bryan winning the championship at WrestleMania 30, and I was there live. That is a reaction that I don't think I've ever seen in any other, I've never gotten that sort of reaction in wrestling where I was so legitimately excited. It's so weird. Like, you cheer when something awesome happens. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, no, this is so awesome. But when Daniel Bryan won the championship, I couldn't help myself. I couldn't sit down if I wanted to. It was the weirdest thing. And there were so many great mark-out moments from Daniel Bryan. And the thing about Daniel Bryan that was so great is he felt so legitimate. You know what I mean? He felt so genuine, and in this era in WWE where everything was so pushed and so forced and so manipulated by what WWE wants and their corporate image and everything, it just felt like just a breath of fresh air. And you can't match it. It was so awesome. And just, going back after he debuted in WWE and going back, and because I was vaguely familiar with him. I was like, I had seen maybe like one Bryan Danielson match because I was just strolling around on YouTube looking at ROH matches, you know what I mean? But going back and looking back at his career and then reading his book and reading about what a credible journey he had and, savoring the moments you did have with Daniel Bryan, it was really, really great. So for that, I'll put Daniel Bryan at number 3. And number 2, Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels was my favorite wrestler once Chris Jericho left. Shawn Michaels kind of filled in that gap. I was like, okay, I need a new favorite wrestler, because after Chris Jericho got, carried out by those security guards, I remember watching that Raw as a kid, and I was just like, oh shit, my favorite wrestler's gone. And Shawn Michaels just kind of filled in that gap. I had always liked Shawn Michaels, but it was during this time when Shawn Michaels became my favorite wrestler that I really started to notice how great he was. And around this time, 05, 06, 07 is when I started going back to older pay-per-views. And I'd watch, I try to go on YouTube and look at old pay-per-views. I would just start watching old Shawn Michaels matches. And those matches were absolutely insane. It was just when I noticed just how great he was. Shawn Michaels was never really the champion, you know what I mean? So there really wasn't any reason for me to get invested in him as the favorite wrestler of all time, you know what I mean? Because he wasn't really doing anything from a championship standpoint. He was just a utility veteran that put guys over and had great matches, but there's just something so infectious about his entrance and his charisma and his promos and everything. And again, I always liked him, but it was during this time when Chris Jericho left that he kind of became the new shorter, he was kind of a smaller guy compared to everyone else. And, he was the cool guy with long hair, and, he had the cool theme song, he had the pyro and everything. So he kind of filled in that gap that Chris Jericho kind of left when he was quote unquote fired. Every single show I would look forward to Shawn Michaels match just because I knew it was going to be so great. And then again, going back and watching all the older Shawn Michaels matches and trying to find DVDs, and even though there were never any DVDs or pay-per-views in the 90s because DVDs didn't exist back then, just going on YouTube and trying to find old matches. So it was just a great time, and I just remember Shawn Michaels just really opening my eyes to what great wrestling matches look like. Okay, and with that, we are done. We are bed, bath, and beyond done with this Q&A. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions, and thank you all for listening to this. Even if you just listen to your own little section, dude, I totally appreciate it. Thank you very much for all your time, guys. My name is Jericholic8704, and I will see all of you guys later.